What if I told you that the driest inhabited continent on Earth, a place where rivers run backward, lakes vanish overnight, and the ground beneath your feet is technically older than the moon, receives more snow every single year than Switzerland? Australia is not what you think it is. Most people picture a hot red desert, a few kangaroos, and a city on a harbor. What they don't know is that Australia is one of the most geologically bizarre, ecologically extreme, and spatially mind-breaking places on the entire planet. Here are 50 incredible geography facts you never knew about Australia, counting down from 50 to 1. Real quick though, I'm a real person. This is a real script, and I'm about to mispronounce half of Australia. Drop the correct version to the comments and I'll do better next time. Let's dive in. Fact 50. The snow paradox. Most people assume Switzerland gets more snow than anywhere in the southern hemisphere. The reality is different, because the Australian Alps spread across a massive surface area in New South Wales and Victoria. They receive a larger total volume of snowfall each winter than the entire country of Switzerland. The mountains aren't taller, they're simply wider, and in snow measurement, width beats height. Fact 49. Wider than the moon. Australia measures roughly 4,000 kilometers or 2,485 miles from its westernmost point to its easternmost tip. The diameter of the moon is only 3,474 kilometers or 2,159 miles. If you placed the moon flat on a map of Australia, it would not reach from one coast to the other. You could drive across a continent wider than Earth's only natural satellite, and it would still take 4 full days. Fact 48. The Mercator Lie. On every standard classroom map, Australia looks roughly comparable in size to Greenland. In actual land area, Australia is more than 3 times larger. The Mercator projection inflates land masses near the poles to keep grid lines straight, shrinking equatorial continent in the process. Greenland looks like a continental ice sheet. It is, in reality, roughly the size of the Democratic Republic of Congo. Fact 47. The Coastal Crunch. Australia is the 6th largest country on Earth, but 90% of its population lives within 100 kilometers or 62 miles of the coast, leaving the interior, an area larger than Western Europe, effectively empty. Ancient, nutrient-depleted soils and a permanent rain shadow make the interior increasingly hostile the further inland you go. The result is a continent-sized donut of civilization around a hollow, human-free center. Fact 46. The flattest continent. Australia holds the record for the lowest average elevation of any continent, just 330 meters, or 1,083 feet above sea level, with more than 85% of the landmass below 500 meters, or 1,640 feet. Antarctica averages over 2,000 meters, 6,562 feet. Australia's flatness is the direct reason the interior has almost no rainfall-generating mountain ranges, which is itself why most of the country is a desert. So we've already broken the map, shrunk the moon, and flattened an entire continent, and we're only 5 facts in. Now things start getting politically weird. Fact 45. The Dingo Fence. To protect southeastern sheep from dingo predation, Australia built the Dingo Fence, stretching over 5,600 kilometers or 3,480 miles across 3 states. For comparison, the entire US-Mexico border is 3,145 kilometers or 1,954 miles. The fence runs through terrain so remote it requires dedicated patrol teams checking for breaches. Inside it, the absence of large predators caused native herbivore populations to explode and permanently reshape local ecosystems. Fact 44. The longest straight border on Earth. The border between Western Australia and its eastern neighbors runs dead straight along the 129th East Meridian, or 1,863 kilometers, or 1,158 miles, without a single deviation. No rivers, no mountains, no geographic features define it. Purely an act of colonial cartography. Surveyors drawing a line through territory they had never visited, across terrain that didn't care. Fact 43. Darwin is closer to 5 foreign capitals than its own. Darwin is geographically closer to 5 foreign national capitals: Dili, Jakarta, Port Moresby, Bandar Seri Begawan, and Manila, than it is to Australia's own federal capital, Canberra. It functions, geographically speaking, as a Southeast Asian city that happens to fly an Australian flag. Fact 42. The Micronation Farm. In 1970, a wheat farmer named Leonard Castley found a legal loophole in Australian constitutional law and declared his property an independent sovereign nation, the Principality of Hutt River. It issued its own passports, printed its own currency, and charged visitors entry fees for 50 consecutive years. It dissolved back into Australia in 2020, not because the government forced it, but because Castley was old and chose to return. Fact 41. The driest inhabited continent. Most people assume Africa's Sahara makes the driest inhabited continent. Australia takes that title. More than 70% of its landmass receives less than 500 millimeters or 20 inches of rain per year. A permanent subtropical high-pressure belt sits over the continent's center, suppressing cloud formation year-round, so consistently that meteorologists use Australia as the global benchmark for dry climate modeling. A fence longer than a national border, a straight line drawn through nowhere, a farmer who just decided his wheat farm was a country. Australia's relationship with geography is creative, but the land itself is about to get extreme. Fact 40. 160 days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Marble Bar in Western Australia holds the world record for most consecutive days above 37.8 degrees Celsius. That's 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The town sustained that threshold for 160 straight days, from October 1923 to April 1924. For 5 months, the temperature never once dipped below boiling blood heat. Marble Bar sits in a bowl-shaped valley ringed by ironstone ranges that absorb solar energy all day and radiate it back through the night. Fact 39. The disappearing inland sea. Lake Eyre sits 15 meters or 49 feet below sea level and is normally a blinding white salt flat dry enough to set land speed records on. But when the rare rains strike the Queensland Highlands, an ancient network of inland channels delivers water over weeks. The lake becomes the largest body of water in Australia almost overnight. Pelicans arrive by the hundreds of thousands, then evaporates back to salt. A full fill happens only a handful of times per century. Fact 38. Clouds that fly at rooftop height. The Gulf of Carpentaria is the only place on Earth where the morning glory cloud phenomenon can be reliably predicted. These roll clouds stretch 1,000 kilometers or 620 miles in length and travel at 60 kilometers per hour or 37 miles per hour, just 100 meters, 330 feet above the ground. They're triggered by a collision of sea breezes from both sides of the Cape York Peninsula, generating an atmospheric boar wave at dawn. Glider pilots travel specifically to surf them. Nowhere else produces them on a schedule. Fact 37. Fires that make their own storms. Australia's eucalyptus forests and extreme heat create conditions for a terrifying phenomenon, the pyrocumulonimbus cloud. When a bushfire burns hot enough, the rising heat column generates its own localized thunderstorm above the fire, producing lightning, but no rain. That lightning strikes dry ground miles away, starting new fires before firefighters can respond. The fire expands its own footprint through self-generated weather. Fact 36. The oldest material on Earth. The Jack Hills region contains zircon crystals dated to 4.4 billion years old. The Earth itself is only 4.54 billion years old, meaning these crystals formed within 140 million years of the planet's creation, before the oceans existed, before the moon formed. They're the oldest known solid material ever found on Earth, surviving 4.5 billion years while everything around them was destroyed and rebuilt. A lake that fills and vanishes without warning, clouds that surf the sky at a rooftop level, fires that summon their own lightning, and rocks older than the moon. We haven't even gotten to the geology yet. That's next, and it gets stranger. Fact 35. The fastest continent. Australia is the fastest moving continent on Earth, shifting northward at 7 centimeters or 2.75 inches per year, nearly 1.5 meters or 5 feet since 1900. The consequence is practical. Australia has had to update its national GPS coordinate system multiple times because self-driving software and precision agricultural machinery were being mispositioned several feet from the continent's actual drift. Fact 34. The continent with 0 active volcanoes. Every other continent has active volcanic zones. Mainland Australia has none. Not a single one. It sits squarely in the middle of its own tectonic plate, far from any subduction zone or spreading ridge. The only continent completely isolated from the forces that generate volcanic activity. That's why it's so ancient and so extraordinarily flat. Fact 33. Australia's volcanoes are 2,485 miles away. The only active volcanoes under Australian jurisdiction aren't on the mainland. They sit 4,000 kilometers, or 2,485 miles, southwest of Perth on the sub-Antarctic territories of Heard Island and the McDonald Islands. Mawson Peak on Heard Island erupts regularly, an active stratovolcano in the middle of the Southern Ocean that almost no human being has ever seen in person. Fact 32. The underground mountain. Most visitors assume Uluru is a giant boulder sitting in a flat desert. The reality is stranger. Uluru is an Inselberg, an island mountain, and what you see above the surface is only the tip. The formation extends an estimated 5 to 6 kilometers, or 3 to 3.7 miles, into the Earth. The red monolith is the exposed peak of a buried mountain range covered by sediment over hundreds of millions of years. You're looking at a mountain that's mostly underground. Fact 31. The bigger rock nobody knows. Most people believe Uluru is the world's largest monolith. It's not. That title belongs to Mount Augustus in Western Australia, roughly twice the surface area of Uluru and completely dwarfing Yosemite's El Capitan. Mount Augustus sits 500 kilometers or 310 miles from the nearest city, which is exactly why almost no one outside Australia knows it exists. It holds a world record the world doesn't know it has. A continent that moves fast enough to break GPS. No volcanoes, except for the ones erupting 2,485 miles away. And the most famous rock in the country isn't even the biggest one. Australia keeps rewriting the rules. Let's keep going. Fact 30. Life from 3.5 billion years ago. Shark Bay contains the world's most significant collection of living stromatolites, structures that look like rocks but are alive, formed by cyanobacteria colonies, the same organism that first oxygenated Earth's atmosphere 2.7 billion years ago. Stromatolites dominated life on Earth for over 2 billion years before complex animals evolved. The ones in Shark Bay are genetically continuous with organisms from 3.5 billion years ago, the oldest living things on Earth. Fact 29. The Beehive Mountains nobody found until 1982. In the Kimberley region, a range of orange and black striped sandstone towers rises from the desert like giant beehives. Bizarre, photogenic, and completely unlike anything else on Earth. The outside world had no idea they existed until 1982, when a documentary crew flying over the Kimberley accidentally filmed them. Aboriginal Australians had known about them for tens of thousands of years. The rest of the world simply hadn't looked. Fact 28. The living structure visible from space. The Great Barrier Reef is the largest single living structure ever built on Earth. Over 2,300 kilometers or 1,430 miles of reef, 2,900 individual systems, 900 islands, visible from orbit. Longer than the entire U.S. East Coast from Maine to Miami. It's not a single organism. It's a civilization of coral, built over thousands of years by billions of polyps smaller than a fingernail. Fact 27. A rainforest older than the Amazon. Queensland's Daintree Rainforest is the oldest continuously surviving tropical rainforest on Earth, at an estimated 180 million years old. Tens of millions years older than the Amazon. It was already a mature ecosystem when dinosaurs ruled the Earth. It contains plant families with no living relatives anywhere else, lineages so isolated by time they become entirely unique. Fact 26. A plain with no trees and 300-foot cliffs. The Null Arbor Plain is a 200,000 square kilometer, or 77,220 square mile, flat limestone block, a former seabed, with a name literally meaning no trees. At its southern edge, the limestone ends without warning. Vertical cliffs up to 90 meters, or 295 feet high, drop straight into the Southern Ocean for hundreds of kilometers. No beach, no transition, flat land, then a vertical wall, then open ocean. Organisms older than animals, mountains no one found until 1982, a reef you can see from space, a jungle older than the dinosaurs, and a plain that just ends, straight into the ocean. The scale of this place is genuinely hard to process. Here's more. Fact 25. The ocean of permanent pink. Lake Hillier on Middle Island is permanently bubblegum pink. Not at sunrise, not in certain light, but always, year-round, even when bottled. The mechanism is a unique combination of Dunaliella salina algae and halophilic bacteria producing carotenoid pigments in extreme salinity. Unlike other pink lakes that shift with temperature or sunlight, Hillier's chemistry never changes under any conditions. Fact 24. The ocean that flows sideways. In the Kimberley, tidal ranges of up to 10 meters or 33 feet wide twice daily force billions of gallons of seawater through cliff gorges barely 10 meters or 33 feet wide. The pressure differential creates what appears to be a waterfall flowing horizontally. The ocean literally pouring sideways through rock walls. First-time visitors assume they're looking at a special effect. Fact 23. The desert wave. In the Western Australian desert, 350 kilometers or 217 miles from the nearest city, a 15-meter or 49-foot granite wall looks exactly like an ocean wave cresting and about to break. Wave rock is 110 meters or 360 feet long, perfectly concave, striped with mineral runoff. The wave shape was carved by chemical weathering, water slowly dissolving granite along the base over millions of years into a perfect frozen surf break. Fact 22. A property larger than Israel. Anna Creek Station in South Australia covers 23,677 square kilometers, or 9,142 square miles. Larger than Israel, larger than New Jersey. It's a working cattle ranch managed by a handful of station hands. Moving cattle from one end to the other requires helicopter mustering. It's not a national park. It's private property, One family's land is bigger than a sovereign nation. Fact 21. The classroom larger than Western Europe. Because outback homesteads are so isolated, Australia invented the School of the Air in 1951, a distance education system. First via HF radio, now satellite, covering 1.3 million square kilometers or 502,000 square miles. A single teacher's classroom is larger than France, Germany, and Spain combined. Some students are the only child within 100 kilometers or 62 miles of their home. A lake that's permanently pink, a waterfall that flows sideways, a wave made of desert, a cattle ranch bigger than a country, and a classroom the size of Western Europe. We're halfway through, and the human stories are just getting started. Fact 20. The longest straight road on Earth. The air highway's 90 miles straight is actually 146.6 kilometers or 91 miles long. The world record for the longest completely straight stretch of paved public road on Earth. No corners, no curves, no intersections. You point the car forward and drive for 90 minutes through mathematically perfect nothingness. Drivers have veered off from highway hypnosis because the geometry gives the brain nothing to process. Fact 19. The longest straight railway on Earth. The Trans-Australian Railway holds a separate record, the longest straight railway track on Earth at 478 kilometers, or 297 miles, without a single curve. The reason is simple. There was nothing in the way. No rivers, no mountains, no valleys. Surveyors pointed east and laid track. Passengers on the Indian Pacific report that the horizon never changes for hours. The vanishing point sits directly ahead and stays there. Fact 18. The underground town. Coober Pedy produces over 90% of the world's gem-quality opals. Surface conditions, temperatures exceeding 50 degrees Celsius or 122 degrees Fahrenheit, constant dust storms, no shade, are so extreme that the entire town went underground. Homes, hotels, restaurants, churches, and a backpacker hostel are carved directly into sandstone hillsides. Coober Pedy is the largest underground human settlement on Earth, a town where geography above ground was so hostile that civilization moved below it. Fact 17. 1 million wild camels. Australia has the largest population of wild camels on Earth, an estimated 1 million animals. Imported in the 19th century for outback transport, they were released when trucks replaced them. With no natural predators and ideal desert terrain, the population exploded. The irony: the Middle East now imports Australian camels back because the wild herds are among the healthiest, most disease-free camel populations on the planet. Fact 16. The dry boat race. The Todd River in Alice Springs holds water for only a few days each year. The rest of the time, it's a sandy walking path. In 1962, locals invented the Henley-on-Todd Regatta. Competitors cut the bottoms out of their boats, step inside the hull, and run down the dry sand carrying the vessel. It's the only boat race in the world ever canceled due to rain, because actual water in the river made it impossible to run. A road so straight it causes hallucinations, a town built entirely underground, camels being exported back to the Middle East, and a boat race on a river that doesn't have any water. Only in Australia. 15 facts left. Fact 15. The cleanest air on Earth. Cape Grim on Tasmania's northwestern tip hosts a World Meteorological Organization station that consistently records the cleanest air on Earth. The Roaring Forties wind belt arrives uninterrupted across thousands of kilometers of open southern ocean from Antarctica, passing no industry, agriculture, or cities. Scientists use Cape Grim as the global atmospheric baseline, the zero against which all other pollution is measured. Fact 14. The cathedral under the desert. Beneath the featureless Null Arbor Plain lies one of the largest limestone cave networks on Earth. Massive vaulted chambers, crystal clear underground lakes, and fossils of megafauna that died in the darkness thousands of years ago. Water percolates through the ancient porous seabed over millennia, dissolving chambers the size of cathedrals. Above? Nothing. Below? A vast hidden world. Fact 13. The prehistoric mega tsunamis. The Zootdorp Cliffs on the western Australian coast rise 100 meters or 328 feet straight out of the Indian Ocean. Geologists found something unexpected on the cliff tops. Massive boulders weighing hundreds of tons, deposited far inland. The only force capable of moving them is a wave of extraordinary height. The evidence points to prehistoric mega tsunamis that threw car-sized rocks over a 30-story cliff face. Fact 12. The fire that's burned for 6,000 years. Near Wingen in New South Wales, a hill called Burning Mountain moves slowly across the landscape. Beneath it, a coal seam has been on fire for an estimated 6,000 years, the oldest known continuously burning fire on Earth. It moves at about 1 meter or 3.3 feet per year. Aboriginal Australians knew about it for millennia. European settlers assumed it was a volcano. It's a fire older than the Egyptian pyramids, burning quietly underground right now. Fact 11. The world's most painful plant. In the rainforest valleys of far north Queensland grows the gimpy gimpy, a plant avoided by every creature that encounters it. Its leaves are covered in microscopic silicon needles that inject a neurotoxin on contact, described as feeling like being set on fire, doused in acid, and electrocuted all at once. The toxin embeds permanently in the skin and reactivates when wet, sometimes for years. Horses have reportedly thrown themselves off cliffs to escape it. The cleanest air on the planet. A cathedral hidden under a treeless desert. Boulders thrown by prehistoric waves over 30-story cliffs. A fire that's been burning since before the pyramids were built. And a plant that makes horses jump off cliffs. We're in the top 10. Here's where it gets ancient. Fact 10. The Magic Trick Lake. Lake George near Canberra appears on official maps as a 155 square kilometer or 60 square mile lake. In reality, it alternates between a functioning lake filled with fish and a completely dry grassy plain where farmers graze sheep. No one fully understands why. The drainage depends on a subterranean permeability system that's never been mapped. Geologists call it a ghost lake. 1 year it fills, years later it vanishes, with no reliable model for predicting either. Fact 9. The mountain that swapped its name. For decades, Australia's highest point was recorded as Mount Kosciuszko at 2,228 meters or 7,310 feet. A later survey found a problem. The nearby peak, called Townsend, was actually taller. The correct response would have been to rename the highest point. Australians simply swapped the names of both mountains. Kosciuszko kept its fame. The map changed. The mountains didn't move. Fact 8. Rivers that flow away from the ocean. On every other continent, rivers flow toward the sea. In Australia's eastern interior, many do the opposite, flowing inland toward the dry center. The Great Dividing Range acts as a continental spine, forcing western side rivers away from the Pacific and into interior basins. Water that falls in Queensland may evaporate in South Australia without ever reaching the ocean. The rivers don't empty into the sea, they simply disappear. Fact 7. The Christmas Island crab shutdown. Each year, triggered by the first rains of the wet season, approximately 50 million red crabs simultaneously migrate from Christmas Island's interior to the coast to breed. The island sits closer to Java than to mainland Australia. The migration is so dense and the crabs so protected that roads and infrastructure are officially closed while they cross. Special bridges and tunnels have been built for the crabs. The entire human geography of the island reorganizes itself around their route. Fact 6. The Sand Island with Rainforest. Kagari, formerly Fraser Island, is the largest sand island in the world at 123 kilometers, or 76 miles long. Sand islands should not support rainforests. Sand has no nutrients and drains water immediately. Kagari does it through a perched aquifer, rainwater trapped inside dunes by layers of compressed organic matter built up over thousands of years. The result is freshwater lakes suspended inside sand dunes, feeding rainforests growing out of beach sand. It should not exist. It does. A lake that can't decide if it's a lake. A mountain that quietly renamed its neighbor. Rivers that run away from the ocean. 50 million crabs that shut down an entire island. And a rainforest growing out of beach sand. 5 facts left, and they're the ones that'll stay with you. Fact 5. The ancient mountain range nobody talks about. The Great Dividing Range runs 3,500 kilometers, or 2,175 miles, down Australia's east coast, the third longest mountain range on land in the world, longer than the Rockies and the European Alps combined. It was once an Appalachian-scale system with peaks potentially exceeding 4,000 meters, or 13,123 feet. 300 million years of erosion wore it flat. What's left is modest-looking, but, in terms of raw length, one of the most significant landforms on Earth. Fact 4. GPS coordinates expire here. Australia moves 7 centimeters or 2.75 inches per year, fast enough that its GPS coordinate system becomes factually wrong over time. The national datum has been updated multiple times because precision agriculture machinery and self-driving software were consistently mispositioned by several feet. Australia is the only country that must periodically reschedule the official coordinates of its entire territory because the land itself refuses to stay where the maps say it is. Fact 3. The highway that circles a continent. Highway 1 is the longest national highway in the world, 14,500 kilometers or 9,010 miles, in a complete loop around the entire continent, connecting every mainland capital. For context, the entire U.S. interstate highway system is roughly 77,000 kilometers, or 47,850 miles, and Highway 1 alone is nearly 20% of that. One road, one country, one continuous loop around a landmass wider than the moon. Fact 2. The oldest continent. The Pilbara Craton, the ancient core of Australia, is one of the oldest stable pieces of continental crust on Earth, over 3.5 billion years old. When most of the planet's surface was still molten rock, the Pilbara was already solid. It's never been subducted, recycled, or destroyed by plate tectonics. To stand on it is to stand on ground that's existed in roughly its current form since before complex life evolved anywhere on Earth. Fact 1. The living fossils still breathing. Shark Bay's stromatolites are not just the oldest living things in Australia. They're the closest living things on Earth to the original form of life itself. The cyanobacteria that build them are genetically almost identical to the organisms that created Earth's breathable atmosphere 2.7 billion years ago. Every lungful of air you've ever breathed, every breath taken by every human, animal, and creature that's ever lived was made possible by the ancestors of these organisms. They're still alive, still growing, still sitting at the edge of a bay in Western Australia, generating oxygen the way they have for nearly 3 billion years, and almost no one knows they exist. That was 50 facts about Australia, and we haven't even touched the full story of how the continent's tectonic speed is breaking GPS, or what happens when a pyrocumulonimbus firestorm reaches a city. If Australia made your head spin, hit subscribe for more fact-filled geography facts hidden on Earth. Thanks for watching.